He didn't even read the code, just highlighted the entire script and pressed delete like he was wiping a smudge off his desk. "We need real engineers, not digital janitors," he said, smirking like he'd just cracked a joke. But that script, it wasn't just lines of code. It was the reason the ICU didn't crash last Christmas, the reason the ER printer didn't jam during triage. And just like that, gone. His name was Jackson Hale, new CTO, big LinkedIn energy, all flash, zero clue. And me, I'm Reese. I don't talk much in meetings, I don't decorate my desk. But for the past 8 years, I've quietly held this hospital's digital backbone together through power outages, software bugs, ransomware scares, even one intern who thought Control plus Alt plus Del was a fix-all. They never thanked me, but they always assumed everything would just work. Until the day they decided I was replaceable, until they called me legacy, until they tried to run my system without me. Before I take you through what happened after I walked out of that building, where in the world are you watching from today? And here's a question that's been sitting with me. Have you ever poured your soul into something only to be dismissed like you were never there? If that strikes a nerve, drop a comment below. Your story might be the echo someone else needs to feel seen. I wasn't always invisible. 8 years ago, when I first joined St. Ellery Medical, we were still running on secondhand servers and crossing our fingers every flu season. I came in during a network failure that had locked the ICU out of its patient charts. No one could figure it out. I stayed up for 32 hours, patched the firewall blindfolded with 2 cups of vending machine coffee, and didn't ask for credit. That's just who I am. I don't shout, I fix. I built half the system from scratch. No vendor bloat, no overpriced consultants, just clean logic and nights spent on call while everyone else slept. When the ER dashboard glitched, it was me who rewrote the back-end module. When the anesthesiologist's tablet wouldn't sync, I found the latency bug in 17 lines of undocumented code. Most of the time, they never even knew there was a problem. That's how good I got at preventing them. I was the reason the night shift ran smoothly. The reason patient monitors didn't reboot mid-surgery, but no one remembered my name. The doctors just said IT fixed it. The nurses called me tech support. And the execs, they didn't call me at all. I didn't mind, not really. There was something strangely peaceful about being the one who caught the falling pieces before they hit the ground. It wasn't about the recognition. It was about the integrity, the control. The quiet power of being the only one who truly knew where every wire led, where every log file buried the truth. Still, I felt it shifting, a tension in the air, more meetings I wasn't invited to, more decisions made without asking the person who built the foundation they were standing on. And then, one day, my admin access failed. Just a blink, a small red error message. I thought it was a glitch. It wasn't, but we'll get there. His name was Jackson Hale. He showed up on a Monday morning with perfect teeth, a wireless headset, and the kind of confidence only people with no idea what they're doing seem to have. He came from a failed health tech startup in California, something about AI diagnosis and blockchain medical records. The kind of place that spent more on brand colors than back-end security. But somehow he charmed the board, called himself a visionary disruptor, said the hospital needed to evolve its digital posture. Within a week, he'd rearranged the entire IT structure. New tools, new dashboards, a new reporting chain. He called it streamlining. What it really meant was chaos. He introduced a cloud-based scheduling system that didn't sync with our EMR. He removed the nightly disk check scripts, said they were legacy noise. And he started pushing live changes straight to production. No sandbox, no rollbacks. At first, I thought it was recklessness. But no, Jackson genuinely believed he was fixing things. He thought all systems should be simple, fast, visual, drag and drop. He once asked me, "Why does the pharmacy order module even need a command line interface?" I blinked. Because it talks to 3 different firewalled systems, and one of them was built in 2003. He laughed like I was speaking Latin. Old systems are like old habits, he said. Gotta break 'em to grow. But he wasn't breaking habits, he was breaking stability. And the worst part? People started listening to him. He replaced our veteran network engineer Benji with 2 temp contractors. He moved our alerting system to a flashy dashboard that needed 5 browser extensions and couldn't run in dark mode. But I stayed. I watched. I documented. Because when a stranger takes the wheel of a machine he doesn't understand, the crash isn't if, it's when. It started small. The weekly systems alignment meeting disappeared from my calendar. I figured it was a glitch in Outlook. Those things happen. The next week, I asked Carla from Data Ops if the meeting was rescheduled. She blinked and said, "Oh, I think Jackson moved it to a core strategy group." Core strategy? Right. Then came the permissions. At first, I couldn't access one of the deployment logs, just a red access denied warning where there used to be my signature. I flagged it. No one replied. 2 days later, my write access to the build pipeline vanished. Then my visibility into the QA environment. No one said a word. No email, no explanation. I felt it in my bones before I admitted it out loud. I was being phased out. I watched as my responsibilities were handed off one by one to people who didn't know the system. Not really. Tyler, a contract of, barely out of boot camp, was now owning alert routing. Jess, who thought cron was a typo, got dashboard privileges. They weren't bad people. They just didn't see the wires beneath the walls, didn't know which log file would quietly scream when a process died. Meanwhile, Jackson smiled like a man who'd just cleaned house. He started calling me the legacy brain, said it in front of people like it was cute. I smiled back, but inside, something shifted. I wasn't angry, not yet, but I was awake. So I did what I always do when something feels wrong. I started documenting. Not in the shared drive. I knew better than that now. I backed up my scripts, archived the dependencies, logged every undocumented tweak I'd ever made to keep this place running, and quietly, without saying a word, I created something new. A mirror. A place where the truth of the system would still live even if they deleted me. I didn't know it then, but that mirror would soon become more than just a backup. It would become a weapon. I didn't go to the leadership summit, wasn't invited, but I heard about it the next morning. Mia from Clinical Systems poked her head into my cubicle and said, "Hey, nice work on that new redundancy framework. Jackson made it sound revolutionary." I stared at her. "What framework?" She blinked. "You know, the one with the layered failbacks and watchdog demons, the one he showed off at the summit." I smiled, a small, quiet smile. He hadn't changed a line of code. He just renamed it, gave it a fancy title, HailGuard Resilience Suite. Said he built it in response to a hypothetical outage scenario. Said it was proof of his forward-thinking infrastructure strategy. What he really did was download a diagram I created 5 years ago and slap his logo on it. My scripts, my architecture, the same system I patched through storms, power outages, and one ransomware scare we never reported. He took all of it, and the board loved him for it. Photos went up on the hospital's internal newsletter, Jackson shaking hands with the CIO, standing in front of a slide titled Next Gen Infrastructure for Modern Care. I zoomed in. At the bottom of the diagram, in tiny, faded font, was my original file name, Reese_mirror_failover rev3. No one noticed. No one cared. He stole my work, my nights, my weekends, my pride. But I didn't confront him. Not then. I went home that night, sat on my couch, opened my laptop, and made one final addition to the scripts he loved so much. Just a single line. Small, invisible, but very, very important. And the best part? He would never see it coming. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I had just finished rebalancing a log rotation issue that no one else even knew existed, the kind that if left unchecked would quietly fill up storage and choke the system within a week. No one asked me to fix it. No one thanked me either. I did it anyway. That's just what I've always done. I went to the server room to grab my mug, the black one with faded letters that read RTFM, a joke only sysadmins find funny. The hallway was quiet, cold from the vents humming with the sound of spinning discs behind locked doors. As I passed the far rack near the backup node, I heard voices. Laughter. It was Jackson, of course. He was talking to Evan, the junior dev, who still thought IP meant internal password. They hadn't noticed me. I was behind the rack, blocked by the cabinet door. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but then I heard my name. Jackson's voice, loud and dismissive. Reese, she was just a glorified babysitter. All she ever did was duct tape legacy systems together and act like she was saving the world. Evan chuckled awkwardly. Yeah, I mean, those scripts are kind of messy. Jackson didn't miss a beat. Exactly. We don't need emotional hoarders clinging to obsolete code. We need builders, innovators, people who move fast. I didn't move. I just stood there, fingers tightening around the ceramic handle of my mug. Not out of rage, not even hurt, honestly. It was clarity, cold, sharp clarity. He didn't just steal my work. He disrespected the very foundation that kept this hospital standing. And worse, he was proud of it. I turned and walked back to my desk, calm as ever. But something inside me had locked into place. No more defending, no more waiting. That night, I opened my terminal, and I began. What I set in motion would take less than 15 minutes, but its effects would last far longer. The thing about systems, real systems, is that they're not just wires and code. They have rhythms, habits, heartbeat patterns you can feel when you've lived with them long enough, and I had. Every blinking LED, every background process, every log rotation, they all meant something to me. So that night, when I opened my terminal and typed in my credentials, it didn't feel like sabotage. It felt like closure. I started with the fallback script, the quiet little demon that no one noticed but everyone depended on. It rebalanced memory during peak hours, shifted bandwidth during remote consult spikes, cleaned up orphaned threads that Jackson's new systems never even saw. I scrolled to the end, line 212. Then I added one small condition. If user ID equals R. Monroe, then exit 77. That's it. No bombs, no deletes, no errors. Just a truth. This script only runs if I'm still here. I repeated the process for each invisible thread I had woven into the infrastructure over the years. The watchdogs, the recovery pings, the latency auto-heals. 17 scripts in total, all tied to one profile, mine. I encrypted each one, mirrored the logs, and synced the logic with the badge access system. If HR revoked my credentials, the chain would quietly pause, not crash, just stop. The building wouldn't notice right away, not on day one, but over time, the cracks would widen, and eventually, someone would ask the question I should have asked from the beginning. Why is everything falling apart now? I closed my laptop that night without fanfare. No dramatic music, no vengeful speeches. Just a quiet sense of balance. I hadn't broken anything. I'd simply told the system, don't run if the one who built you is no longer trusted to be here. And by Friday, they would make that decision for me. Friday morning arrived like any other. The air in the office was filled with the smell of burnt coffee and overused carpet. People smiled too much, said Happy Friday in tones that felt just a little too forced. That's when I knew. I'd been around too long not to recognize the choreography. The calendar invite was vague Q4 Workflow Optimization Review, Conference Room B. No subject, no agenda, just my name and 3 unfamiliar titles on the attendee list. I still showed up 10 minutes early, slacks pressed, hair tied up, calm. I sat in the stiff leather chair, hands folded in my lap, as Jackson walked in, already mid-sentence, followed by someone from HR holding a company-issued folder like a prop in a bad play. They didn't waste time. Reese, the HR rep, began. As part of our restructuring initiative, we're shifting toward a more agile, innovation-first culture. Your contributions have been valued, but I didn't need to hear the rest. As she spoke, I felt the soft buzz of my phone in my pocket. A Slack notification. You have been signed out. Please log in again. It was done. Badge access revoked. System credentials purged. My digital existence severed in the same breath as their pre-scripted gratitude. I stood up quietly, didn't argue, didn't cry, just nodded once, then walked to my desk where a cardboard box already sat neatly packed. The young developer who handed it to me couldn't even look me in the eye. "Sorry," he muttered. I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because somewhere behind all those polite smiles and HR buzzwords, they'd just flipped the switch. The system still looked fine. For now. But what they didn't know was this. The lights were still on, because the fuse hadn't burned out yet. And the next time they hit run, they'd find out just how much they'd actually deleted. That night, I didn't drink, I didn't cry, I didn't even check my emails. I just sat by the window with a cup of tea and let the silence settle, in the kind of silence that only comes when a door closes so firmly, even the echoes respect it. The next morning, I slept in. No alarms. No rush. No emergency pings from the overnight staff asking why the backups hadn't rotated or why a node was drifting. Because those questions were coming. They just didn't know it yet. Across town, Jackson walked into the ops bullpen like he always did. Cologne too strong, confidence even stronger. He nodded at the status monitors. Green, mostly. But what he didn't know, what no one knew, was that the green lights were running on borrowed time. The scripts were still scheduled. The dashboard still loaded. The system was still humming. But the heartbeat, mine, the one they disconnected the day before, was gone. At 7:42 a.m., the first alert blinked. Not red, not loud, just a flicker, latency in the email server. No one noticed. At 8:03, the disk cleanup job failed silently. No fallback script, no warning, just a silent pileup in temp storage. By 8:27, the auto-heal on the patient scheduling API failed to trigger. The request queue started to stack. Slowly. Quietly. And Jackson, he was in a meeting with the board, walking them through a new proposal for a cloud-first future. Meanwhile, a ghost had left the system, and without her, the glue was beginning to loosen. No errors, no crashes, just a slow, steady unraveling like a sweater missing a stitch. And each tug from now on would pull the whole thing apart. What happened next? Let's just say Monday morning didn't arrive as expected. Monday morning came dressed like any other, fluorescent lights, buzzing staff, clocking in, emails loading. Except this time, they didn't. At 7:14 a.m., the finance node crashed. Not a flicker, not a warning. A hard stop. Transaction queues froze mid-write. Payroll scripts hung in limbo. By 7:21, the login authentication server stopped responding. Badges wouldn't scan. Password resets failed. Even the HR portal, the one Jackson loved to brag about, refused to load. At 7:38, the internal messaging system stuttered and died. Slack went silent. Email bounced. All integrations with patient management flickered, then vanished. Inside the hospital, people scrambled. Nurses couldn't print patient charts. Doctors couldn't pull up prescriptions. Visitors were locked out of the waiting list. And the smart thermostats? They defaulted to heat mode. By 8:05 a.m., the surgical wing was 86 degrees. Someone opened a window. It didn't help. In the war room, which had been hastily assembled in a side office with dying Wi-Fi, Jackson was sweating through his shirt. Ron, from networking, muttered something about a DNS issue. A contractor tried to reboot the billing gateway. He triggered a dependency loop and locked out 3 critical service accounts. Meanwhile, across town, I sat on my balcony with a cup of coffee and watched the mirror dashboard, the one no one else knew existed. It was lit up in warning red. Not angry. Just waiting. They hadn't figured it out yet. They were still rebooting, refreshing, blaming the firewall, calling the vendor. But the truth was simpler than they realized. They'd removed the custodian, and the system, it had followed orders. What they tried next would only make things worse. The phone rang at exactly 9:17 a.m. Not my regular number, the burner I kept tucked away in a drawer, the one only 2 people had ever called. I let it ring once, then twice. Third time I picked it up. "Reese Monroe," I said, calm as Sunday morning. There was a pause, sharp, tense. Then the voice hit like a hammer through drywall. "Reese, this is Alan from the board. No greeting, no pleasantries, just panic wrapped in authority. We need to know what you did. The entire system is collapsing. Finance is down, patient records are inaccessible. Our smart building features have locked staff out of key areas. And the backups?" He stopped. "I'm told they're not real." I could hear shouting in the background. Someone slammed a chair. Jackson's voice, louder than it should have been, barking half-formed sentences like a drowning man trying to organize a rescue. I let the silence stretch. Then I spoke. "I didn't take anything down, Alan. I just stopped fixing what no one else cared to understand." Another pause. "But this system," he started, "was never yours," I interrupted. "It ran because I held it together, quietly. Every day. Through your upgrades, your consultants, your meetings where I wasn't invited." He lowered his voice. "What would it take to bring you back?" I smiled, not because I was flattered, but because it was already too late. "I'm not coming back, Alan," I said. "Some things, once cut, don't get patched. They have to be rebuilt." He said my name again, pleading now. "Reese," but I was already done. I hung up. Not out of spite, but out of peace. Because when you treat the foundation like clutter, you shouldn't be surprised when the building forgets how to stand. And what the board did next, well, even I didn't expect them to move that fast. Jackson didn't last the week. By Wednesday, he was escorted out of the building, face pale, shirt untucked, muttering something about vendor miscommunication. The official statement said strategic realignment, but everyone in that office knew what really happened. The system didn't fall apart because I left. It fell because I was the one holding it up. The board launched an internal audit. 2 weeks of meetings, finger-pointing, and last-minute contractor calls. But they couldn't recreate what they never took time to understand. The scripts were gone, the logic buried, the heartbeat was missing. As for me, I took a consulting role across town. No interviews, no slideshows, just one quiet conversation with a CTO who actually read my code. They doubled my salary, didn't ask me to sit through branding sessions or re-explain why clean logs matter. And I sleep better now. Not because I won, this wasn't a game, but because I stood up even if no one saw it. Because I protected what I built even when they didn't value it. And when the time came, I let it go on my own terms. You know, people always think the loudest person in the room is the one in charge. But sometimes it's the one quietly patching the cracks behind the scenes that's holding the whole place together. So here's the thought I'll leave with you. What happens when the person keeping everything running finally walks away? Have you ever been that person? Or watched someone like that leave and only then realize what they meant? Tell me below. Your story might be the reminder someone else needs.